So I train the students here on social justice activism stuff and also campaign planning. So we work a lot on the Capitol and also on-campus campaigns. And I want to really quickly acknowledge that there's a campaign happening which feeds well into the Peace Symposium stuff that's going on today. But you'll notice the red shirts in the room and duct tape on people's faces to acknowledge the Day of Silence. And that's a moment, nationwide day of silence in honor of LGBTQIA individuals. That's lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex, allies in questioning, anyone who has non-conforming sexual identities. And it's to honor the people who either are too scared to be talking honestly about their sexual identities, or people who have been silenced due to violence. So we'll take just 30 seconds of silence before I let my colleagues introduce themselves in honor of the Day of Silence. Thanks so much for honoring the people who couldn't be here today.
Hi everyone, my name is Anayeli Jimenez. I'm a student here at LCC, and I'm involved in student government. I'm your multicultural programs coordinator here, and that.
And Vice President-elect, we just found out today.
Hi, my name is Matthew Yook. I'm treasurer here of the student government, and also leader of, or one of the leaders of the Asian Pacific Islander Student Union on campus. And I'd like to start off by saying I prefer male or masculine pronouns. And so if folks would like to refer to me as something other than my name, male pronouns are okay. Buying into a gender binary that is assumed by society, because there's a lot of demasculation of Asian males in culture, and so just a moment for that.
Sure, you actually need to go back on that one. So we'll start by just the gender pronoun thing. How many of you all have ever heard of gender-neutral pronouns? Is that something that people in this room are familiar with at all? Oh, quite a bit. Cool, that's good. So there are people who identify as masculine, Matthew being one of those people, Anayeli being a person who identifies as a feminine person. She's got no problems using female pronouns, feminine pronouns, so she and her. There are people who identify as a combination of genders or gender variant. Some mornings you feel more feminine, some afternoons you feel more masculine, or anywhere in between. You call those people gender bending, androgynous, all sorts of words that people use to identify themselves, genderqueer. And those people sometimes choose to use gender neutral pronouns. I myself use gender-neutral pronouns mostly to let you all practice on me, because I know that I'm not gender dysphoric, meaning it doesn't bother me when you call me the wrong thing. Other people have such dysphoria, such discomfort in their bodies and the way people understand their gender, that it really hurts them when you call them the wrong thing, and it's why you should make an effort to ask people before you assume masculine or feminine. So often we go through life without even recognizing that we identify people as one thing or another. And so we'll start there with just talking about the assumptions based on birth and based on genes. And so, yeah, that's up there. Brilliant. So first, media.
I guess that I'll start out by asking, can anyone tell me the definition of media, or where the word media comes from? Exactly. So that's where we get the word media from, is the word medium. And it's just basically like the in-between communication between two, for example, for two people. So it could be expressed in different forms, like newspaper, or like hearing, or visually. We can define media in different ways. And so we wanted to bring that, the first thing that we wanted to talk about, that was that, so that way everyone understands where that definition comes from.
So when we're interrelating with people, we put them in boxes. And we identify people based on their sex and gender, and so frequently we get those two things mixed up. And they are very interrelated, but we must first separate them before we can figure out how interconnected they are. So on the one hand, we've got sex. It's a biological construct. It's your genes, your chromosomes, your genitalia. It's something that's fairly immutable. On the other side, we have gender, which is a sociological construct. It's something that is created by those around you. It's something that's not innate. You don't come out of the womb wearing skirts and heels and makeups and sitting with your legs crossed and all the different things that we do to do gender. And I'm sure throughout today and the conversations you'll be having, those will be similar themes. Doing gender versus just being asex. And so when those two things are in congruence, when your sex and your gender are the same thing, that's called cisgender. When they're different, it's called transgender, or somewhere in between, right? So can any of you all tell me some things that are sex assigned, that are immutable, that are not gender? So things that are defined by your genes. Yeah, thanks, Matt.
Hair color? Oh, wait, no, I don't know.
That's it? Yeah. Hair color, genitals, somebody shout it out. Any other things? The fact that you need to eat 3 times a day, or however many times a day your body needs to eat, the fact that you need to sleep, those things are ingrained in your genes. Huh?
Feelings.
Some feelings, yep, they come up naturally inside of you. Yep. Instincts. Perfect. And how many people have heard of memes, the counterpart to genes? Not enough. Does anybody want to explain what that means?
Meme is a term coined by a biologist, Richard Dawkins, and his book was published late 70s, mid 80s, and he basically talked about that the correlation is genes are to DNA what memes are to communications. It's kind of like a virus of the mind. And it's transmitted through any media, and they mutate like a virus. They require a mind to operate in and to mutate in, and they change. So with respect to this, you could have, traditionally, for example, among the Osage Nation, they had 7 genders, all of which were integrated within their society and had a sacred role, and we'd only recognize 2 of them as heterosexual. In West Africa, among the Dahomey, there are 12 kinds of marriage practiced today. So obviously pre-Christian. So you only generate 12 types of marriage beyond just a male and female pair bond, because you need to integrate those folks within society, though that doesn't necessarily get talked about. So those are memes for dealing with the reality of human sexual diversity, which is itself a meme.
Yes, perfect, thank you. So anything that's passed vertically, generation to generation, is a gene. Things that are passed horizontally by word of mouth or by TV or in print media or any other thing is a meme. So lots of the things in the world that you do every day are memes. If you say LOL, that's a meme. This shirt has Nyan Cat, I don't even know how to pronounce it. That's a meme. Some other memes that are going around the world right now. Shout out.
Grumpy cat.
There you go. There's a meme generator on the internet internet culture has sort of taken over the meme world and called anything that looks like a specific font in a specific box, like that thing that gets passed around Facebook and other social networking things, are called memes, but it's not. It's anything that you know that you share culturally in your society.
And that's where part of the extrapolation comes from, and the usage of the word meme to communicate that, because it is just a picture with text on it, which in and of itself wouldn't mean so much in context, except that it is part of our culture, our society, and we build up definitions around these images. And so they take on new forms, new personifications almost, of different aspects of our consciousness. And as Mark was pointing out, the meme generation of the relationships is trying to explain those genes that are happening. And so a lot of it is societal constructs, which we'll hopefully be able to bring into the forefront so that folks can get a better view of how we process thoughts and identities. And so one of the first forms of transmutable media that was adopted and communicated was print. Gutenberg, with his printing press, was able to also mass produce the Bible, which is one of the first indoctrinated forms of media that communicated the same idea across cultures. And so it created a meme that could be transplanted into different communities.
The other thing that it did was created an immutable truth. So the search for the truth with a capital T, a singular answer, became legitimized when you put it on print and you distributed it exactly the same across everyone that you were talking to, as opposed to the telephone game as we knew it from when we were children. Going to one person, you say something, it gets transferred to another, and it changes a little bit and changes with everybody's lens and with everybody's perspective and as they interpreted it and paraphrased it to the next person. And when it was put on paper, it became the truth, the singular truth. It was no longer about all the people involved in it. It was about what the original source was, and that became the Holy Grail. During that time, we were printing and we started to describe what it meant to be a woman. And it's not like it was never policed by society what it meant to be a woman, and there weren't rules forever about what it meant to be a woman or a man. Every society has its own construct of what that means. But when we started putting it on paper, for instance, in things like Cosmopolitan and Good Housekeeping, we started to domesticate women in ways that said that this is the only way that you can be a woman. And as we've gone through history, we've made that even more narrow in focus. And those publications are still around today, still telling women what it means to be a woman, and the rules about femininity. For instance, it was in magazines that women first started making it a universal truth that every woman needs hairless legs and hairless underarms. That was a brand new thing that had consumer implications. There were reasons that Gillette wanted to make it a universal truth that women had hairless legs. If women had hairless legs, they would buy more razors. And that's how we've gotten these rules throughout time. And so we'll start to talk about, as we move around, who mediates these memes, who decides what the template is for how to be a woman or how to be a man.
And yeah, one of the most bitter ironies I find about this is that the first one is drawn, an artistic model of a woman. And then the next ones have been photoshopped into looking nothing like how women actually are. Yet that's what we consider beauty now, and the womanly ways.
So in the early 1900s, around World War I, World War II, when all the men went off to war, the women were then, they were said, oh, you can come and work in the factory jobs. And so they were allowed to work in these factory jobs and do all the hard labor. And then when it came time to putting a face to radio talk shows and things like that, women were not allowed to do that. And so that was when women were not were told, well, yeah, you could work hard, in the labor industry and stuff like that. But then after the men came back from war, they just, kicked them out and didn't even allow them to do things that everyone, knew that they can do, but just didn't allow them to.
And especially with the radios, because while they were okay to be switchboard operators, handle all the infrastructure, and pretty much know the inner workings of how to run these communication ways, they were never represented. They were never the voice at the other end of the speakers. And that is a trend that we would hope with rights movement and civil justice would be something we were moving away from, but as we'll find out later, it's still pandemic in our media.
And then now we have people like this person here who puts down women and makes jokes and makes them think that they're just objects and not really the hardworking women that we really are.
And I've got some images floating around that will get passed around. The first set is just challenging the gender binary, so forcing you to understand that there's an in-between category that needs to be related to, and then also a chance for you to place yourself on this genderbread person of a spectrum of gender constructs. It's a really cute little, yeah, you'll see it, you'll get excited too. These ones that I'm passing around are what it means to be beautiful in our culture and in our media, and just get a chance to challenge the way that we see women. And the interesting thing, I think, to note with radio, is that we've got this production versus consumption mentality where the men are producing all of the media and the women are consuming it. And so there are people like Howard Stern who go into the world in misogynistic ways because they think that that's what men want to hear. And then there are some people that go into the world putting things on the radio that are very girl powery, that are produced by men because men think that that's what women want to hear. And then there are legitimate feminist, by, for, and about women, things that come into the radio, and that's interesting to note.
There's also an influx of internet radio and pirate radio stations that are bringing female voices to the forefront as well lately.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, perfect. And that's the transition that we're seeing, moving from a world that's mediated by corporate consumerist interest and the influx of open source media and the ways that we're taking back our media and changing the memes. And yeah, that's what we hope to bring about today when we're talking to you.
So now I'm going to ask these questions, like what roles do women play on the screen? Like what do we see in TV shows, movies, things like that? And what TV shows are explicitly gendered? And what are the stereotypes represented for women of color, lesbians, or non-mothers?
Yeah. Somebody might know more about this than me. Thank you. But I believe there was a study done on films, and I guess female characters rarely spoke about anything other than men or other female characters. And somebody might know more about that, but I know that that plays a huge role into what women are portrayed as on the screen, silver screen.
I've read that. I don't know the citation.
It was some percentage where women almost never say anything other than in movies.
It's all drama, yeah.
Microphones.
If they talk.
Yeah.
If they're even allowed to talk.
Oh, I think it's to pick up on the live feed.
Oh, I see.
Because it's being, and so the AV.
So women on screen, explicitly gendered TV shows. I'm asking you to just shout out things that say womanhood something in the title. So I'll give you a couple that I'm thinking about and see if you can give me some more from there. Desperate Housewives, what does that connote? Gossip Girl. Pretty Little Liars, every woman on the cast is a pretty little liar. Other TV shows that explicitly talk about what it means to be a woman or a man for that example.
Two Broke Girls?
Mad Men. men. Yeah. Broke girls?
2 broke girls.
I don't know that one.
According to Jim.
He's a vampire.
According to
Slayer.
Jim. Yeah.
2.5 men.
What does that say about men?
Says that they're either losers that never get laid, or they are. It says that there's only 2 type of men: the smart ones that are losers and can never get a girl, and the douchebags who always get the girl. And that's what girls like, are douchebags.
Obviously.
Nice.
The new girl.
The new girl. Yeah. What's the new girl about?
The new girl features, I think, like Zooey Deschanel, and she moves into a house with a group of men, and that's all I know about it so far, except for she tries to set her friends up with them, and it's all basically, she's the quirky girl that can fit in with the guys, but not really, type thing. I don't know much about it.
2.5 men, 2 guys and a girl, 2 guys, a girl, and a
Father
pizza
knows
place.
best. It's been a while for me. I don't watch TV.
Hey, you can go there.
That was what,
Elaboration?
yeah.
What did they say about fathers in that show?
Well, it pretty much comes down to just that. I think that was where it was the wise and knowing daddy, and he was the authority.
Yep, exactly right.
Say, while we're on the subject of TV shows and media and stuff like that, there's a set of statistics that kind of point out how bad the disparity of gender is, especially behind the scenes. When you look at 54%, and this is according to the Gina Davis Institute for Media Studies, like 54% of consumers, of TV and radio consumers are women. Yet only 19% of the writers are women, and less than 7% that are producers and directors. So the voice of what is supposed to be women speaking is mostly men, while 54% of consumers are women. So I think there's clarifies, where this is coming from.
Also, the male gaze. Has anyone heard of the term the male gaze? So what do you think of when you picture a woman on the screen? She comes into the shot, right? So the first time you've got a woman on the screen, she comes in. Likely her hair's blowing, first of all. She's got this like backlit something or other that makes her look like she's glowing. If she's a beautiful white girl most of the time. Otherwise, maybe you've got some other weird music in the background that shows that she's supposed to be exotic or trampy or mean or something like that. But if she's supposed to be like the protagonist, pretty girl, she's normally white, which is a major problem. I just want to get that out there because I haven't said anything about that yet, and that's a problem. But also, they start with her legs or her boobs, and they scan up her in this very male-gazed lens. So you're supposed to be looking at it in a heterosexual male, even if it's a chick flick designed for women, it starts scanning up her body. Take time to notice that if you haven't already. It's really interesting that you are always forced to sexualize her, even if you as an individual wouldn't have done that, wouldn't have seen her breast or her buttocks first. The camera forces you to zoom in on that and starts to train you on how you're supposed to be observing the world around you.
And one of the most disturbing parts about the male lens is there's been a surge of crime dramas on primetime television, and those generally don't deal with the nicest consequences or like results of stuff, sorry. And it's just like it's eroticizing abuse and death, and I don't know, that's just a disturbing trend in society that we really we have to address.
Frequently, it's the abuse and death of beautiful women.
Well, there's the running, screaming woman, which it's like I say, it's been a while, but last time I was seeing popular media, that was coming up all the time and running, and usually sort of futile because their pursuer is after them, but it's always this helpless and being pursued, running from something. And something I used to notice was the R-rated movies. Anytime they'd have some sexual titillation, they would have to have some sort of abuse, some sort of violence, to give them social significance or something, but it was always, the titillation was mixed in with violence.
There's a statistic that 1 in 8 movies that comes out of Hollywood, including like the kids' movies, just 1 in 8 overall, has a rape scene in it. And Rock and Roll Magazine did an article about this, and they said that if even one of those scenes, even one person in the audience is turned on by that, then they've completely missed the boat, right? But most of the time they have the lighting and the sweaty something that suggests that there's some sort of an erotic nature to the fact that that violence is happening and that it's non-consensual violence too. Yeah, important. So finally, that last question. Think of the most recent movies that you've seen or TV shows that you've seen that have women of color, that have lesbians, that have non-mothers as women. So these are non-traditional women, which I find very interesting because what % of the population is a beautiful, white, able-bodied, heterosexual woman in her 30s, slender, wears makeup, shaves her legs, all of those things. That is the traditional woman in these screen shows. But if you can pull yourself back from that image, how many other images do you see and how do they display those women?
Well, none of those 3 categories are represented that often. And when they are, they're almost always crazy, bitches, or sluts.
Or some type of like, kind of like, I hate to say it this way, but like a servant type thing. Like even recent movies like, what was it? The one about racism with the ladies. I can't, The Help, yeah. Like you still are seeing images of people of color in type of like service roles where like even one that comes to mind, Made in Manhattan, Jennifer Lopez is a maid, really? Like Jennifer Lopez is a maid. So that kind of like kind of servant type of archetype is played out a lot.
Or they're simply there for the male roles to play off of. They're just like sounding boards for the other characters.
And I must say that in The Help, that family still exists, and they didn't give permission for their story to be used, and they didn't get any compensation for the use of their story.
I noticed a lot that in the media, when there's a lot of single women in their 30s or whatever, there's always something wrong with them. They have some type of weird habit or hobby, and it takes the perfect guy to have to see past that and then appreciate them when everybody kind of has something that doesn't make them perfect. So.
Yeah, actually, I'm really saddened to hear that. Like I say, I haven't watched a whole hell of a lot of TV in a while, but I remember the Mary Tyler Moore Show. And she was the only person on that show with, well, she was the solid one there who was the person who had the real intelligence, who would go and tell people when they were all fucked up. It was a very consciously feminist show, and it sounds like it's been regression since then.
Yeah, other stereotypes that we see, like with women of color, for example, Latinas, when we see Latinas in films and things like that, we see them as like the spicy Latinas and like, the big hair and the curves and things like that. And so it's sometimes alarming to see that that's the only view that we can see when we see women in women of color in films and things like that. So.
And yeah, one concern though about Mary Tyler Moore as an example, it was in kind of a matronly role, because even though she was a problem solver and had a good head on her shoulders compared to everyone else she worked with, she never rose up to a position of actual management or newsroom like authority. And so that is kind of a role that has been pigeonholed, especially through media, which I find concerning. And then again with like the craziness of other folks of color represented, right? Like with Asian females, there's a lot of eroticization tied up with a lot of the advertising we see on billboards, on movie theaters. And yeah, I don't know if anyone has more reflections. We can come back to it later.
Can I have some time to break out? It's time to talk about it.
Oh, the fun part.
That's my favorite part. What? All right. All right. So we start to wonder why it is that there is this homogenous voice that says these weird things about women when we ourselves are saying, no, that's not us. I don't want to hate every woman. I don't want to see her as a threat to me getting my man. And we're like, why are they doing this to us? And we notice that throughout history, the same companies are using different tactics to get you to watch their shows based on the era. And this is the changing of the memes. So a good example of it is Lysol. They branded themselves in the 40s, 50s as a douching product. I don't know how many of you are familiar with douches. They're unhealthy to begin with, but Lysol douches particularly really not okay. But that was before there was regulation enough that they could not say that in their media, and so they did. And they went along with that for quite a while until they were told that they could no longer do that. Lysol now has a great advertisement out that's co-opting the culture of now. So back then the culture was keep yourself fresh, your man might cheat on you or leave you, you better use Lysol. Now it's if you want to be a great woman, if you want to be a healthy mother, then you will join this movement of healthing. How many of you all have seen this commercial that's out right now? Healthing. It says stop cleaning, start healthing. And it's this whole, you're not a good mother if you use Febreze or some other product. You have to use Lysol and you need to join the movement. And so their advertising is, it's a movement. And that's because there's a culture of change that's happening right now. We all feel that there's a shift going on. It's exciting and energizing. It's not so exciting for corporations. They're seeing the threat right now, which is cool. Congratulations for putting that pressure on. But they're starting to co-opt our language. And so things like the Finish and Cascade commercials that are right now that say, join the revolution, millions have switched. It's like you're buying a new dish detergent. This isn't a revolution. You changed products based on what company was the most selling at the time at Costco, for example. There's another one in the Dutch Brothers. I was buying coffee the other day, and there was a sign at Dutch Brothers that said, it was for their energy drink, and it said, wake up early, stay up late, change the world. Implying that if you bought these energy drinks, somehow the revolution would be instigated. And so we've got to start questioning why they're telling us these things and where the feedback loop is happening and why they're being a part of that. You two, anything?
I'm always reminded of John Berger, art historian, who said that media is advertising, and that it might not necessarily be advertising something to buy or sell, but it's advertising ideals, taking them, personifying them, and boiling them down into propaganda, or seizing on a popular movement like this, especially with armchair activism, memes popping up everywhere over the internet, and it seeming like, sweet, we're moving forward, and that popular movements are a prime example, maybe not popular. The Harlem Shake video went viral, had millions upon millions of hits, right? But this wasn't done by a bunch of consumers clicking, like, and viewing it. It was done by a bunch of ad agencies, posting it, reposting it, sharing it, reblogging it, and just creating so many connections and links on the internet that it looked like it was viral, and it became viral, even though I'm pretty sure all of us think it's pretty ridiculous. And that is just one of the current incarnations of the evilness of our media complex. And I don't know if folks have seen other things that they thought was utterly ridiculous. Why would someone share it? But maybe someone didn't, and maybe something did.
I don't know if you guys are going to talk about this, and if you are, I don't want to preempt you, but greenwashing is really dangerous in media right now because there is a conscious movement towards trying to live healthier with the earth, and corporations are glomming onto that in a really scary way and using those words to sell their products, which are still just as unhealthy as they ever were. And even changing the colors on their packaging. And
Clorox Greenworks is one of those companies. It's basically the same product. Clorox puts far, far, far more money into their legal teams to quelch science that says that bleach is a carcinogen than they do on their R&D departments. But when they found out that green was a thing, they real quickly got a clear bottle, put green dye in their product, and called it green. Yeah.
I don't know if you'll talk about counter memes or anti-memes or whatever you want to, whatever nomenclature, but for example with coffee. So coffee was discovered in Islamic countries. The Prophet actually banned its use because it caused people to want to play music and dance. I'm not sure what's wrong with that, but then the association, then that meme, when it got spread, to Parisian coffee houses where revolution was brewing, that's part of that mimetic strand you're dealing with at Dutch Brothers, where there's going to be commodification of something. You're basically talking about a phenomenon that Gil Scott Heron talked about. Well, the revolution will not be televised. You will, the revolution will not be brought to you by a white tornado, a tiger in your tank, or white people. The revolution will not be televised. So now we've evolved to the internet, where you're still spreading the same memes and understanding that unless you question them and also deprogram, understand where they're coming from, and then reinsert, a healthier meme. Understand, Lysol as a douche. Wow. Okay, that's like aspartame being an insecticide and being repurposed by Dick Cheney into a sugar substitute. It's still poison, but now it's become a ubiquitous poison.
These two videos are both on YouTube, and I'm going to compare them. The first one is vile, so my apologies. But I will show it to you anyway, and I'll show you, try and compare the difference between what a corporation produces and what a human produces, because both of those things are on YouTube, and we need to start differentiating where they're coming from and challenging and questioning why they want to tell us stuff. So don't you want to buy that beer now? So male gaze, first and foremost, what did you see of her? Did you see how smart she was? Or the things she has to say that are fascinating? Right? Her face, so you don't know whether or not she wanted to be there, right? And then just, here you go, are all these advertisements also that YouTube forces you to watch as we go along. How do I escape? Oh, no. No, no, no. Don't make me.
Or just hit that.
Okay. Click, click. Oh, I'm going to make y'all dizzy when I go through all of them. Bounce, bounce, bounce. Okay, the next one I want to show you is one that came out, is one that came out in light of the recent rape stuff that happened, where those men were defending themselves because she was drunk, and so she didn't say no, so how could they know that she didn't want to be raped? And so this is one that a gentleman put on YouTube in response to that.
Hey bros, check who passed out on the couch. Guess what I'm gonna do to her? Real men treat women with respect.
Cheers. So in taking back our media,
and I don't know, this is just a prime example of what we can do with the tools at our disposal. One be used for destructive objectification, pure utter capitalism, or the other to build community, dialogue, and open up that we are all human, that we all actually like each other as individuals, and that when we communicate amongst each other in a community setting, in a personal setting, that humanness comes to light, and then we can truly actualize each other, which media makes more and more impossible. And so, I don't know, there's a few exciting community-based medias that are coming up that are revolutionizing the way that we can communicate with one another. Zines on a college campus are very popular, of course, expressing alternative ideas, other viewpoints that the mainstream media selling these types of commercials might not let on to. Adbusters, for instance, a Canada-based zine against advertising and capitalism, against corporate influences in social justice. They are the folks that started the Occupy Wall Street movement. They said, we're going to take back the corruption of Wall Street because it is detrimentally impacting us even up here. And so through that movement, through community organizing, through public community periodicals, we were able to organize that. And so for folks that aren't from the area, we have a Eugene Weekly here. Portland has the Mercury. And so there are weekly newspapers generally published in communities that have more community focus, more people focus, more neighbor focus, which is something that communicating is all about. Touching base with other individuals as humans, because that is the greatest thing that we have. Sorry, thank you. There's also some amazing radio actions going on right now. As she'd brought up, some pirate radio projects. There's the Prometheus project that had a summer occupy the radio waves because the Federal Communications Commission allowed for nonprofit organizations and educators to take on low-frequency FM bandwidth in their communities. So that way we can start investing in radio equipment communally and talk to one another, host shows, interviews, and dialogues. And with the internet, we can throw these on podcasts, which is that little purple icon, because a lot of us have mobile devices where we can hear these types of audio streams. And if we can take them with us and just have them playing in the background during our day-to-day, I do that often with Democracy Now!, which is something I'll touch on later. And yeah, I love that one picture showing that raising of the antenna, raising of democracy, and bringing America to what it should be. I found just last night that there's this blog talk radio that allows you to set up a free account and open up a blog that people can listen into on the internet, people can call and have real-time conversations. And then it also gets recorded, so that way the podcast can be reflected on later. And so for organizing abilities or other types of community communication that needs documentation, it'll do it for free on the website. One problem though, the parent company of it is News Corp, which is Rupert Murdoch's organization, which runs Fox. And so it's an amazing tool, but there's always strings attached with technology and with utilizing the shiny things that make things easy for us as consumers.
And the Koch brothers Brothers just put more into NPR than the government did this year. So now the Koch brothers, yeah, so now they own more of NPR than the public does.
There's two others that I haven't heard here, and one is your Facebook page. I've basically, without necessarily sending out requests, I've had friends contact me from Africa, from India, from Philippines, a worldwide network that I can share thoughts with. And then web pages are cheap. They usually come with your email account, and it takes a little, maybe a book on HTML or maybe simple editor, and your own mind and your own thoughts. You've got a worldwide medium.
And you can take those classes here.
This might kind of deviate a little bit, and I asked about this in the last seminar too. How do you guys think CISPA is going to affect these types of mediums that we have as they become corporately controlled, even though 1.5 million Americans asked for it not to be?
They're already corporately controlled.
Well, that's true, but now this just opens up the floodgates for censorship.
This was exciting. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things going on in the governmental processes, like the sequestration that's gutting a bunch of federal funding, and then Obama's amazing social justice work in the LGBTQIA community, while the rider for the Monsanto bill got attached to an economic feasibility, and the and CISPA got brought back up to Congress again, right? Which is ridiculous because it is now being introduced, right? And talked about, debated.
The U.S. House of Representatives passed it. Yeah, so the U.S. House of Representatives passed it, and unless I haven't taken economics or history even, but I'm pretty sure that our last chance is if Obama vetoes it at the Senate, and that's kind of it, is all we got left. Petitions obviously didn't work that well for us.
Likely it won't pass because the Senate's democratically controlled and Congress is heavy Republican. But anyhow, the corporate control of the internet exists in many ways that we don't even see. If you look at Google, when we go to search something, if you have your laptop and I have mine, and we search the exact same keywords, what you get on your top feed versus me are different based upon what we've past looked. Facebook has gotten, it can be utilized as a good tool, but at the same time, if anyone's actually read the 83 pages of the latest licensing agreement, what they've done is create, even with your best friends, unless you and I, if we're friends, unless we have a certain amount of communication back and forth via message or share or like, our posts don't go out to the people we want them to. Our friends don't see those things. You have more and more what are considered viral that are given a higher priority on the news feed. So they are slowly drowning out the voice of us. And I think it's going to what we can do for solutions is knowing these types of things beforehand while we're utilizing the tool, being wary of what's behind the scenes trying to influence our behavior and decisions.
The other thing I would say to that is choose the open source option whenever possible. Dump your computer and start using Ubuntu. Do all the things you can to make it so that you're not using their files and trackers. And also, and this may be me sounding more paranoid than you are, but I make sure that I don't let it log into all the other ones together. You know how it lets you log in with Facebook, and that would connect it to my Prezi, and then because they own all my Google Docs, and my Google's connected to my Facebook, and my Facebook's connected to my Prezi, they could very well own all of the things that I've ever published. And then they know the kind of person they am, they know I'm an anarchist, and we already know that they're coming and arresting anarchists by the dozen in the Pacific Northwest. So we fight back with open source, I think, is the key. And we...
Yeah, but also, of course, using our current media devices that can capture these types of instances of peer-to-peer interaction. because that's one of the few things we have left. And so using Facebook to actually post videos of stuff coming down, of people resisting grand jury indictment to make sure that no one is improperly persecuted for and punished unjustly, because that is not what democracy is about.
The only other cool thing that I was going to add to your comment about Facebook is that this morning I got onto Facebook and I had so many posts that said something along the lines of social media or the internet is trumping TV news any day in response to what's going on in Boston. And if you don't know what MIT stands for, you can look that up immediately. You click that and it sends you to a site about MIT. If you don't know what a pressure cooker bomb is, you click on that and you know what that means. And there's this sourcing of information and knowledge that is so accessible and so cool and so immediate that the internet can be taking over, and we need to make sure that we're constantly sharing with one another instead of letting the media corporations mediate our communications anymore, because it's no longer necessary. We can see a guy falling over. That's a picture of Burning Man, by the way, him skydiving down into Burning Man. You can take pictures in the sky, you can take pictures underwater, you can take pictures of bombs. And we know that the Arab Spring stuff wouldn't have happened without these kinds of activities. And it's pretty cool. Close us?
And mentioning the Arab Spring, there's some internet resources out there that have come out of that. Commotion Wireless, out of a media project, has formed a mesh network. While it doesn't need an internet signal it does need an internet signal in that Wi-Fi mesh. It will create, from different cell phones, laptops, and computers, a network that people can communicate to one another on through Wi-Fi, because Wi-Fi networks are everywhere. And if any of those do have access to the internet, then suddenly everyone can access the internet. So that way we can truly democratize information, because that is one of the best things that the internet can provide us. That this fast form of media transportation back and forth will allow us to organize behind. Of course, we must understand it and deconstruct its ins and outs. And so, media is really hefty.
And then by this last slide, we just wanted to make the point that everything is connected, just like how a tree grows, its roots are connected. Or when it's grow to the top, it's connected, and then webs from spiders and all the galaxies around the universe are connected. And this is like the real internet. This is how real communication and connections are made. So, and we wanted to thank you for being here. Yeah.
Can you guys recommend any websites that would be informative if you wanted to change, like, say, your web browser, or not web browser, but your the computer, the Windows or whatever. Operating system? Yeah, operating system. To Linux or something like that. Can you, or just informative in terms of staying safer on the internet?
I unfortunately have not made the Linux Ubuntu switch yet, although there's a lot of fan support, as anything techie that is open sourced. If a person gets excited about it, that's already inclined to do a bunch of code crunching, well, they will hop on board. I do like CNET, c.net.com, for looking at software and comparisons, because it has a lot of peers that say what software is, especially freeware style. And so as an opportunity to peruse programs that you might want, I definitely recommend CNET because, of course, the reviews of stars. But if anyone else has better advice,
For the Linux itself, if you have that much energy for it, I'm not that much of an enthusiast myself, but there is uglug, the EUG, LUG, and Google on it. You should be able to find it. The Eugene Linux Users Group, you can get direct peer support.
I would like to switch over to someone.
I have USB with Ubuntu on it.
I do want to mention, as a student, we write essays constantly, and we have to use Microsoft Word. But Open Office is awesome. If you don't know about Open Office, it's an open source. You can save it in doc form so your teachers can still read it, but it's not a corporate controlled. It's completely open source. Firefox is also open source. They do have it at the library, and I use it over Internet Explorer any day. But those are also resources to use for open source.
And based off the Linux code.
I'd like to just point out one thing I think that's really important as we move forward. I mean, the media's changed, the internet is a great tool, but I think you touched on that humanist part of us and how that is activated is not necessarily done as well through the internet as it is in person. And especially speaking to the guys here, I think if we look at like this is rise to the end of gender violence and gender inequality, and I mean everything in that way. When you look at some of the things that are popular is looking at how women can change their look, their behavior, their actions to lower their risk of violence. And the reality is, guys, let's just knock it off. Stop putting the pressure on someone else. We need to, as men in groups that are just men, and we see things, be the person who can stand up, rise up, and say, you know, don't laugh at something that's not funny just because you feel the pressure around. I mean, these are obvious cliche things, but this is the thing that has the most impact on human society, more than the internet. These things are in our head, out our head fast. I mean, like getting information. It's great to be able to have information right there as a source. But 5 minutes later, because of how quick it comes in, that's how fast it goes out. Things that are experienced firsthand, things that are read in a book, had long conversations, those things stick with us. Our actions together as humans stick with us. So if we keep making that difference, it doesn't matter what corporate control has over the internet, we still live our lives, make our decisions. Anyhow, sorry, I'll get off my soapbox.